What up? What up?
GM, what's up?
What's up, Chad? I'm not sure if Chad Barraford is joining. Just give us a minute here and we'll find that out.
We do have Pluto, which is just as good.
What's up, guys?
What's up, Pluto?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. This week went fast. I feel like we were just doing this.
Yeah, it does.
that always ends up happening. I'm like, wait, didn't we just do one of these? Last week was a good one. And we have a big release this week that we talked a little bit about last week, but we kind of got, bogged into that privacy conversation a little bit. But big release that happened this week, THORnode 195. Talk about that a little bit. We'll go into AVAX, new chains, the new process for chains being added, I guess you could call it. Some good stuff coming up.
Yeah, let's definitely dive into 195.
Yeah, sweet. Let's do it. So, Pluto, what's new in 195? I know we have protocol-owned liquidity, which we can talk about more in depth. We have low volume pools being demoted. What kind of details you got about 195?
Yeah, so let's start with protocol on liquidity. So I know we discussed that some on the last spaces, so we don't really have to go into that too much. Other than that, to say, it landed in 195, and basically we're going to begin testing on it on StageNet. So myself and a couple other of the devs are basically putting together like a test plan. So trying to figure out what the expected results of the different models that we've run on protocol owned liquidity so far would be. And then we're going to go into StageNet and test those assumptions using, real synth utilization and synth minting. So that's going to be happening over the coming weeks. As we start battle testing protocol on liquidity, we'll give more updates on where that's landing. But that's a big PR, and that's going to be an excellent, beginning of the single-sided liquidity. So expect to see more PRs for that feature starting to land now that protocol on liquidity has landed. So yeah, that's POL. I'm having trouble restarting my computer right now. Do you just want to just remind me what the next? We can just go through them one by one, or just hit the big ones.
Yeah. Well, while I try and pull that up, another thing we have is pools being demoted for low volume. So that's a new thing that's recently been. It's added with 195. So I think that's one of the really big things. 195.
Yeah, for sure. So some people will probably notice that there's a number of pools on THORChain that produce 0 daily volume. SNX, Aave, Yearn, and some of them, produce very, very low volume. So basically what's happening is that those people are parking their assets in THORChain pools, and they're receiving block rewards to their LPs. So basically the protocol reserve is just awarding them with Rune, even though it's not generating any, those pools are not generating any income for the network. So the PR went in. I'm not sure if this is one that it has to be voted on in order for it to take to be enabled or to take effect. I can probably look that up while we're on the call here, but if it does, then we'll have to do a node vote to actually enable that feature. So to basically set a minimum liquidity fees amount over a certain time period in order for a pool not to be demoted. So yeah, basically the purpose of that change is just to make sure that we're not wasting protocol reserve funds on pools that are not actually that have no possibility to even replenish the protocol reserve in the form of fees, and are not providing any utility to the users of THORChain. That's a good call out, that one.
That's cool.
Yeah, do you know what oh, sorry, you get Chad.
Oh, just saying that's cool to make the reserve more efficient. But so you're saying that it would be an automated cutoff. It wouldn't be voting on SNX. It would just be SNX is below this fee threshold, therefore it's automatically kicked into staging.
Yeah. I think what it is there's going to be a certain liquidity fees threshold where if it's not earning a certain amount over that same time period, then it's just going to be, demoted. The exact mechanic of it, I'm not sure. I didn't author this PR, but I can, while we're on this call, I'll be like reading through the PR so I can give a more definitive answer on that.
Cool. Other stuff I'm looking at in 195 allowed node operators to update the operation fee. I assume that it was because of that problems that people were having with the node operation fees for pooled nodes. So that's where multiple people can bond to one node. And I think there was some issues that that node operators were having with that, with not being able to update their fees at certain times. So I think this one effectively fixed that. So now node operators can just change the fees, which seems to make a lot of sense because it's a trusted relationship that nodes have with their clients that they provide bond with. So it seems to be a good change that rolled out in 195.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly like you said. That we, a couple of node operators had approached us and been like, hey, like, what's the problem with this? Like, or they had set it, and then, to like, they'd send like a test transaction to set it to like 1.1% or something. And then they were like, do I have to really rebuild my node and, have my bond providers all withdraw and then rebuild my node and then have them redeposit just to change it? So yeah, just exactly what you were saying, like the bond provider relationship it's meant to be like, like 4 or 5 bond providers in a trusted relationship that are all pulling together into a node. So basically our thought process there was that, sure, if a node operator wanted to like rug their bond providers, they would be able to with this change by like, changing the, operator fee to 100% at the last minute. But then like their bond providers would, basically realize that they'd pull their bond and you would have just like ruined a lucrative business relationship. So like when we thought about it from like, in reality, like our node operator is going to actually like, abuse this. It didn't seem like that would be likely. So we just went ahead with that change.
Right, and they wouldn't be able to steal like the actual root
exactly,
just the rewards that's accrued to a specific bond provider.
Yeah, exactly. That the thinking there is like, would any node operator like risk, the business relationship of earning 10 or 15 or 20% of node income for years to come, or try to steal like one churn's worth of rewards? It's just the game theory doesn't work out. All right, let's talk about the while we're talking about sort of like bond and node stuff, let's talk about the changes to the effective bond cap. So basically that was a PR that went in, super creative idea by Son of Odin, which basically was to essentially, instead of having the bond weighted rewards, which today are 3 times the minimum bond. So essentially 900, like the minimum bond to enter the network today is 300,000. 3 times that is 900,000. So that's why if you look at like THORnode.network or a list of all the nodes, you'll see that most of the nodes hover at or around 900,000 because that's the optimal amount of bond to receive the most rewards on your node. So if anyone has questions about like why we do bond weighting in general, save them till the end and we can talk about it. But basically the way we, arrived at that, 3x minimum bond was really just sort of a guess. And so what this new feature does, or this new PR does, is to make it instead based on something algorithmic or something, mathematical. So what we do is we take the highest bond of the bottom 2/3. So if you were to look at like the nodes that we have today, I think there's about 93 on the network. So if you were to take 2/3 of that, you'd basically say 62. So basically 90. Sorry, let me just do the math on this real quick. So if you were to look at the node today that's in the 31st slot, then that would be the node that is effectively the highest bond weight reward cap. So it's a little bit confusing, but basically the idea there is to make it so that it's essentially captures the node that is providing the most amount, or it's providing the most amount of security before falling into the threshold of consensus that you would no longer be providing security. I think I got that right. But yeah, basically that change makes it so that that minimum or that bond weighted reward is sort of on a sliding scale rather than like fixed as a function of, some other arbitrary number, which is the minimum bond. So hopefully that explanation made sense. But we think that overall that's going to lead to more optimal bond distributions.
Yeah, I think the only thing that people might not know is that the amount of rewards that a node gets is weighted based on the amount of rune that they supply, but that's only up to that certain threshold. So this just changes that threshold, which changes basically the maximum, the optimal amount of rune to supply to the network. So this just it makes it that it's that sliding scale that makes it so it can scale up, it can scale down. It doesn't have to be changed with a constant. It just changes with the effective bond of the network, and it won't be affected by like a large node leaving the network or anything like that. It's like a nice median point where it'll stay somewhat stable, but it can increase and decrease, freely with the market.
Yeah, good call. All right, let's take a look at, let's see if there's obviously another important PR that landed this release was AVAX. So AVAX is now merged into the main code base, and it's essentially ready to be enabled as soon as we complete the remaining audits. So there's still some discussion as to whether we have to get the code arena. I think on the last space we had someone on from Code Arena, which basically it's a really cool program. It's a way of getting more eyes, more people hacking on the THORChain code base. And so the thinking was originally that like we would have them review the AVAX chain client, and then that would be sort of the audit, so to speak, for that chain client. But essentially, when we had some discussions with them, we figured that it was actually would be more beneficial to have them review the main Thor node code base and like all of the LP accounting, all of the observation logic, churning, like that stuff is definitely super important, and like we want to get more eyes on that as well. So we just think that it might end up being more bang for our buck to have that code competition be on the main THORnode code base. And because the AVAX chain client is basically like 95% the same as the EVM client, which has already been battle tested, that we're just going to basically, have one more pass at it from our internal security team and then launch AVAX. So I think we could see AVAX starting to roll out over the next week or two, rather than having to wait for that Code Arena competition. Since personally I think that our time, and the money spent having those extremely talented eyes on the code base would be better spent on the main THORnode code base. But we're still trying to work it out with them what like the most optimal use of their time is going to be.
Right, and it's not like the router for AVAX is unaudited. It's a fork of the Ethereum router basically. So it's not like it's completely unaudited code that's going into THORnode.
Right. I mean, it's sort of the same thing that we did with Atom. Atom also did not receive a formal code audit because it's basically the same exact code that it's just the Cosmos chain client, right? And more generically speaking, there was nothing different between Atom and Terra. And we already had the Terra chain client audited by Terra SCV, and they did a really good job on that audit. So basically, since it's the same exact code, we felt confident enough to just move forward with launching Atom using that same code. Since there's really no difference, there's like no differences in how, for example, consensus works the same on two Cosmos SDK chains. But otherwise, there's, in terms of the, in terms of like AVAX versus Ethereum, again, 95% of the mechanics are the same under the hood. So we're probably just going to have, do a couple more passes on that and then start to roll that out.
Yeah, and one thing pointed out by one of the devs is that the AVAX router was audited by Hacken already. So that the Solidity contract there was already audited independently. So
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it's good that the Code Arena thing, like, hopefully you guys can get that all worked out. And I think it'd be great if they audited the entire like Thor node code base, because I mean, it's a big community of white hats over there, and getting all their eyes on THORChain, and really digging into this stuff. That just creates a bigger white hat community around THORChain, and more people poking, trying to discover bugs, accounting errors, and invariances. Any type of thing that we want discovered. These are the type of people that are going to get it done. So I think a full audit would be really beneficial from them.
For sure. Yeah, definitely super excited about that. The Code Arena. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so there's a bunch of like little things. There was two PRs that went out that should essentially there's just tweaks to how we report gas on various chains, Ethereum and Atom. That's going to reduce in less slashes for node operators, so more rewards on average. Hooray! And then how we calculate fees on Ethereum also changed. We collected a lot of data, but that also should reduce. Basically, sorry, the Ethereum fee is the one that's going to reduce slashes. The Atom change to how we report fees is going to reduce chain bloat by sending fewer messages. Let's see. There were some changes to configs. This stuff is all pretty boring. Yeah, just a lot of like bug fixes, tech debt.
ADR4?
Oh yeah, ADR004. So that was just so again, that's just the PR that like merges the actual proposal into the architecture repo. So that one has been under discussion. We're probably going to start a node vote for that pretty soon. So basically what ADR004 does is it encrypts the Bifrost key shares and stores them on chain, so that in the event that the chain was halted either by some sort of hack or outside pressure, that we would be able to reconstitute the Asgard vaults and then restart the chain either from scratch or from where we left off. So that's definitely going to be like one of the better code-based things that we can do in terms of censorship resistance. And so we'll have node operators voting on that sometime soon, probably within the next week or so. Another vote that we're also going to have to put out as well for node operators is going to be flooring the outbound fee. So basically, since the outbound fee right now for sending on the BNB chain is so low, sometimes ARB bots don't actually use synths to ARB. They just use like actual L1 outbounds on the BNB chain. And so what that does is that creates a lot of like pressure on the queue, on the swap queue, which is basically like it prevents Asgard from staying up to the date with the queue. So in order to increase the throughput there, we really want to encourage synth utilization and arbitrage opportunities. And so by doing that, we'll basically by putting the minimum outbound fee to $1, it would essentially have that effect. So a couple, both of these ADRs, ADR 003 and 004, are somewhat technical, but they're still things that sort of like change the fundamentals of THORChain, change the security of THORChain. And so as such, we would need node operator approval to move forward with those. So we'll get going on those votes pretty soon here.
Sweet. Is there anything else in 195? I don't know if I see anything major.
Nope. Mostly just bug fixes. This was the biggest release I think that we've ever done. So, combination of a lot of bug fixes, optimizations, new features. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be adopted anytime now. I think there's like 1 or 2 nodes left, and then that will be adopted. And then, yeah, just excited to start testing protocol and liquidity on StageNet.
Awesome to hear the details of the update. Yeah, I think that's the most exciting part, just for like us normies out here, regular users and stuff. It's just like, this is really laying the groundwork for like the next set of huge features. So yeah, it'll just be cool to like hear about the testing and then hopefully get those features rolled out once everything's safe.
Yep. POL is the backbone of synthetic asset scaling on THORChain. So POL working means that we can start scaling synthetic assets, which will just basically allow us to grow single-sided liquidity ads once that feature is finally live.
Sweet. I'm going to drop off to work on some other stuff right now, but if you guys need me to come up and like explain or clarify anything, then just like shoot me a DM on Discord and I'll hop back in.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Pluto, for coming up.
Sounds good. Thanks. Later. Cool. So looks like we're not getting Chad today.
No, I guess not, but that's all right. No problem. Yeah, it's a big release, 195 POL. AVAX is going well. Looks like we'll have that within the next few weeks. It's been baking on StageNet for a while, and once AVAX is out, Aggregator will be out like very soon afterwards, or right when the release happens, basically. So yeah, that's going to be really big too. Aggregator with AVAX is going to get us. Hopefully that'll generate some really nice fees for AVAX LPs on THORChain.
Yeah, totally. I think it'll be cool to like see how a launch goes with like all the added stuff like the aggregator right off the bat. Like that should make the launch a lot stronger. I would think it really makes like the functionality from day one a lot higher. So hopefully that drives a lot more volume and attracts a lot more liquidity right away.
Yeah, it's just going to be a great chain right from the start because just low fees. Quick client, like that's the low. That's what everyone wants on THORChain is just quick transactions, easy arbitrage.
Exactly.
Low fees. It's gonna be really good, especially we've seen like even the depth on AVAX. It's not super deep. It's only around like 3 million or so last time I checked. They're generating a lot of fees for the amount of liquidity that's there, especially in comparison to the other pools. The APRs on Atom pool are very high. So I would expect to see, something similar, probably even higher for AVAX. I think there's a lot more interest in AVAX than something like Atom, personally.
Definitely. Yeah. The AVAX ecosystem is pretty on fire. I'm not in it super deep, but like definitely see a ton of activity and a ton of excitement over there. So definitely clearly would be the best chain to get in here. So excited for that. And also getting the stables, the AVAX stables, I think is pretty big. Like having a cheap, fast USDC, USDT from AVAX. So that'll be cool to see those pools too. Those should be, maybe that will become probably the most popular stable pools over time, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be an insane yield on them because people are gonna be trading back and forth a lot as the only low fee alternative to BUSD. So yeah. I could see USDC on AVAX being really nice.
Same.
One of the other things that's happening right now is nodes are voting for the next chain that they want added to THORChain. So there's a new Mimir command called next chain. And every single chain, that's being considered right now has a number Dash is 9, Haven is 10, and nodes can vote on what they want the next chain added to THORChain to be. So the information for that is in the THORChain developer Discord in the THORnode mainnet announcement channel, and that's where nodes can just signal what chain client they want added next, obviously after AVAX, and it's really just signaling to the devs which chains to be working on, because up to this point the devs being the core team who did the Doge integration a while back, and then 9 Realms who did the Terra, Atom, and AVAX integration, is signaling to them don't drop everything and start working on this integration, but these are what the nodes want on THORChain next. This is what we want integrated on THORChain next. So whoever is doing well in these votes will likely be getting just to developer attention to get them on, because there's only there's only so many people working on these things. So things need to be focused, and the nodes need to signal which chains they want added for it to happen. So
Yeah, I like that new signaling process. I think it was Pluto that went into depth on that last week, but kind of like flips the whole process upside down from what it was before. It was kind of like things being built, and then it's like, hey, nodes, you want this, right? And now it can be like, okay, what do the nodes want? Make sure that devs are working in alignment with what the nodes actually want. So hopefully that means like, I don't know, less, just more focus on the things that actually matter, the things that are actually get pushed, and, you know, better allocation of resources.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough process, and it's kind of like a balancing act because you know the developers, you know, they want new features on THORChain, they want new chains as well. But then you know those interests might not be what the nodes want. So there needs to be some kind of way for the nodes to say that you know this is what we want to add, and then you know attention can be focused on what they want to be added or you know or not. So you know, hopefully this, you know, this new process goes well. We'll see kind of how it goes out, but you know, something needed to be put in place to just, you know, so have some kind of signaling, process. So some kind of like formal thing to, you know, quantitatively say like, you know, these nodes say yes, these nodes say no, these nodes want this, these nodes want that. So, you know, hopefully this is the better way to do things for now. We'll see how it goes out. This vote literally just started like last night, probably like 12 hours ago or something like that. So I you know, definitely check it out if you haven't already. And if you're a node operator, definitely, you know, use make relay, make your voice heard, and, you know, also just mirror your vote and, you know, signal what chain you want added next to THORChain.
Have you seen any stats rolling in yet on the votes? I haven't looked.
I think there's just been 6 votes for Binance Smart Chain. There's a lot of people talking about Haven, obviously. There's Dash. You know, there's a lot of things that have, you know, a lot of support. But I think right now the only votes are for Binance Smart Chain. But I mean, this is just to signal what the nodes actually want added into THORChain. So that way, you know, devs aren't spending, you know, a lot of man hours, like, you know, building out some chain client or something, and then you know it turns out like you know the nodes don't even want it in THORChain or are not going to run the daemon. So
totally, yeah, I was going to say like my prediction would probably be that it's BSC for the vote. Just it's probably like the biggest low hanging fruit after AVAX. So I know like there was things about the node requirements being really high. I don't know if that's been like looked at or addressed or considered, but yeah, as far as just like volume, liquidity, users, you know, BSC is kind of, and it being like a simple integration because it's just another EVM. So
yeah, for sure. There's no easy answer. It's like, you know, every single chain has its, you know, pros and cons, you know, whether it's easy to implement, whether it's hard to implement, you know, whether it puts, you know, there's a lot of different things to consider when like, you know, thinking about whether to add a chain or not to add a chain. So that's just why, you know, it's best that the nodes decide, you know, what exactly is happening with THORChain, because they're the ones that are actually responsible for the chain itself, and they have to be the stewards of it. So,
yeah, I think, yeah, BSC, I mean, Haven, that's of course like a controversial one at the moment. We'll see what happens there. But also like Osmosis on the list, I feel like that could get some interest and attention. I don't know if it'd be the number one vote this round. We'll see. But I definitely think there's interest for Osmosis. And I mean, you can already get over there like through the Atom integration, but feels like the Osmosis community is just a little more like interested in DeFi and like things that we're doing over here. So Osmosis integration could be an interesting one. Yeah,
I know Pluto is a big fan of the Osmosis integration. I think that'd also be a really strong one, and then we could get, you know, DexAb working through that. It could be a really, really strong integration because they have a really strong just Dex over there too. So I think that would be a great, but you know, there's so many priorities, and you know, eventually, like, you know, given you know, unlimited amount of time, an unlimited amount of trade integrations can happen, but given a finite amount of time, there needs to be like, you know, certain priorities on, you know, certain testing, like, you know, so if your chain isn't voted right away or it's not being, you know, worked on right away, that doesn't mean that, you know, people don't care. It just means that, you know, there's other priorities too. There's a whole chain here. There's so many features that are being worked on. Not that all devs are working on all features, but you know, there's only a limited amount of people working on a infinitely larger number of things that need to be done.
Yeah, IBC aggregator would be maybe the most exciting of the aggregators I could think of at the moment. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, hopefully it can happen. There's a lot of technical challenges with that, but there's some interesting discussion around it. At least something like that sounds incredibly difficult to pull off, but maybe it'll happen one day.
Yeah, I don't know enough on that. I would imagine it's pretty possible, but like I guess that requires that the Osmo itself integration. Like you can't do that with Atom, I think, because the Atom would still have to be sent to IBC first, right? So that would kind of break it. Whereas the Osmo is kind of like a direct link, I think.
Yeah, you're the wrong person, but yeah, I'll trust you. I'll say sure, why not?
I would imagine. Yeah, I think that's why there's the excitement to get Osmo in, because I mean, otherwise, like it would be like, well, why not just build the aggregator now? But I think to get like all the osmosis pools, I would assume for it to be like a one click, like a one signature, I think we would need Osmo, but I'm not sure. I could be wrong too. I'm no dev.
Sweet. Anything else interesting that's happening? Or we could also let audience up for questions too. If anyone has questions or they want to say anything, like if people didn't get their voice heard, last week's discussion and just, want to make some comments or, just speak to the community at large, we're here. You can just press the button on the bottom left if you're on mobile, and come up on stage.
Yeah, feel free to come up. Just note, I or Familiar Cow aren't the core devs. Maybe Pluto might jump back in if there's a technical question and he's available, but otherwise, yeah, maybe a little bit of a casual chat. But yeah, it's been a fun week.
I do my best.
Yeah, same. I'll pretend to be Chad. Just say what you think he would say. But no, I was gonna say it's been a pretty fun week on the THORswap side. We got THORsafe launched, so that's now like an easy way for people to set up THORChain multi-sigs. Just making it in as simplified of an interface as we can for now. I think there will be more simplification in the future, but it's definitely manageable, and like you can set up a THORChain multi-sig, which is pretty cool for potentially DAO run nodes, pooling liquidity together with friends or business partners or whatever, institutional investors, things like that could pool together, or just even personal general security, to be able to set up a multi-sig without having to like run the client stuff on your own and make it all like, understand code basically. So that was a pretty cool development. I think that's pretty big just to see like what whales and like bigger, it kind of allows for like a new, like a different type of investor. Right. So I think that's actually pretty big, pretty exciting. And then we've also got the THORswap aggregator on August 23rd. So a lot of stuff's kind of rolling out right now. That's been talked about for, months. So it's just like a pretty exciting time once again.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about THORsafe. I looked at the docs. I didn't get to play around with it yet because I think it was just released like literally this week. But what's the UX like for that? Like, is there? Can you only use a key store wallet? Can you use a ledger?
So
how's that work?
That's probably the one main downside for right now. I know Mogarchy really tried on that and like really wants to see multiple wallets. So we'll probably see that over time, but I don't know the exact like technical limitation there, but it is just key store for right now. So yeah, basically you just each party needs a key store. So you can just like generate one on THORswap or use an existing one. And then basically each user has to connect to the THORsafe interface, and then you'll see your public key. And then the creator of the THORsafe has to collect the public key. So say like me, you, and Pluto were setting up a 2 out of 3 multi-sig or whatever, like, and I was the one setting up. You guys would send me your public keys, and then I would create the THORsafe file. It's kind of like a key store file. It's a JSON file that represents the combined multi-sig wallet, I guess. So then to like start a transaction, you just have to upload that file to THORsafe, and then you can sign the first transaction, and then you get a new file that has like one signature, and then you pass that along to the next person. So say I would upload our THORsafe file and start a transaction, and I would put on the first signature, and then I could send, and then that would generate a file. I'd send that to you, and then you would put your signature, send that to Pluto. He would put his signature. That's if it was a 3 out of 3, of course. The only other thing that's like a little slight inconvenience that might be avoidable in the future is right now you have to specify which parties are going to be the signers. So for example, if it's a 2 out of 3, with me, you, and Pluto, and I'm creating the transaction, I have to specify on this transaction, it's going to be Chad and Familiar Cow that are signing. I can't just say like, oh, it's going to be 2 out of 3, and then whoever signs first. You have to kind of specify like which wallet is going to be signing. It's really simple in the interface, but you have to, that's just a little thing to note, that you have to like put in who the expected signers are going to be.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it sounds cool. I mean, more multi-sigs for THORChain. I mean, it's a good thing to have. I mean, it's a bad thing to not have, I should say.
That's a good way of putting it. Also, if I feel like I didn't give the best explanation right there, but we did put out a bunch of like tutorials and Medium article, video walkthrough and all that from THORswap. So, if people really want to like see how it works, it's kind of simpler than I probably just made it sound. There's just a few things you have to know, but it's pretty straightforward. I mean, if I can figure it out, I'm sure everyone here can figure it out. So.
Sweet. We brought Kenton and Lucas up. What's up, Kenton?
Oh, hey guys. I think this is a dumb question, so hopefully you can answer it. My brain is stuck on how, with protocol and liquidity, how does that drive up the rune price? I just can't figure that out in my brain.
So protocol owned liquidity doesn't really do anything for rune price. What it does is it looks at this. So I just made a graphic for this last week. I'm going to try and get this out soon once the feature actually goes live. But so for protocol owned liquidity, it looks at the synth utilization, and as the synth utilization increases, once it hits a certain threshold, you can't mint any more synths because that would be unsafe for the system. It would have too much of a liability for the asset. If the rune price dropped a lot, it would basically wreck the LPs in the pool.
It wrecks them because there's too much leverage, right? It get too volatile in there.
Yeah, basically all of the assets. So if this is the Bitcoin pool, for example, all of the assets would be owed to the synth holders of the pool, and the liquidity providers, wouldn't have a claim to that, because if the rune price is down too much, they would just it makes it so basically all the Bitcoin in that pool is owned by the synth providers rather than the liquidity providers. So protocol owned liquidity sort of steps in to take the pressure off of the liquidity providers in this sense by being a liquidity provider itself, and by basically dripping in rune into the pools, it creates its own liquidity position in the liquidity pools. So it becomes a liquidity provider. So that way the pools can grow larger. So that way it never reaches past a certain utilization. So that way it never reaches unsafe levels where it would just completely wreck an LP with like a volatile price movement, basically.
Okay, so
because if you had like a really high synth utilization rate, like 80-90% or something like that, like right now, for example, it's like 15 to 20. If rune price went way down, there's less Bitcoin in those pools, and all of the Bitcoin that's minted by synthetic Bitcoin holders, we still owe that to the Bitcoin holders, right? So that means that there's really nothing left for the LPs. That's why the protocol steps in there.
Okay, so the pools will get bigger and deeper, but the rune price will be constant.
So there's two parts to it, where by minting a synth you're basically locking in rune and Bitcoin into a pool, considering the Bitcoin example. So that puts positive pressure on the price of rune, basically by locking rune into the pool. But by synths being minted, that puts it could potentially put negative pressures on the price of runes. It's kind of two ways about it. It's like they kind of they work in tandem a little bit, where there's one end, this minting the synth locks those assets to a pool, but protocol owned liquidity adds more rune into the pools itself, so that puts negative pressure on it. But that's only as the utilization of synths increase.
Yeah, so if the protocol is adding liquidity, adding rune to the pool, that's like inflation, basically. So it's not like the rune price isn't going to go up. If anything, let's just keep all the price fixed. Let's say there's no volatility in the market. The Bitcoin price is fixed, rune price is fixed, everything's fixed. And all we're doing is adding liquidity to the pool. We're doing one-sided, we're adding Bitcoin to the pool. And the protocol is matching with POL. If we can increase the size of the pool, we can add in all kinds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin, but that won't affect the rune price. The pool will get bigger and deeper, but so will the number of rune in the pool. So the rune price will stay constant, but the number of rune in the system will increase. Is that right or wrong?
Yes, but it also depends. So in this example, this person would be adding in synthetic Bitcoin into the pool, which is effectively locking rune and Bitcoin into
to create the synth, you're buying rune.
If synths are minted with LP units, and LP units are 50%, 50% Bitcoin, 50% rune. So there isn't really while yes, the protocol is only adding rune, it effectively uses rune to buy liquidity units from the pool. So I'm not sure, how much in effect that it would have, because it's effectively buying really small amounts of liquidity units, like every block or so. It's not like it's just like dumping in rune into the pools, like trying to buy Bitcoin or whatever. But yeah, the protocol is adding rune into the pools, but by the user is also adding rune and Bitcoin into the pools by minting synths.
Also, that it would still increase the security bond requirements, right? So there's still that side of the equation if the pools are deepening, right? Like that wouldn't be canceled out by this.
Yeah, and that too.
So basically, like if the pools are getting super deep, even if that rune is kind of like not fully counting in the normal way, it's still deepening the pools, which requires more rune to be potentially bonded by nodes, more security and all that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if this feature scales like, really large, there are going to have to be more nodes more nodes probably will bond in just based on the, looking at the APYs are going to be like, these APYs are really good. Let's buy some store nodes and, add some security into the network, because the incentive pendulum is really tilted that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, even on the lower end, it's still affecting the incentive pendulum. So like, yeah, it doesn't have to get crazy to where like the nodes would be getting all the rewards for it to like even before that, some of the rewards would start leaning towards the nodes that might incentivize, more bond on that side. So.
Yeah. So while the protocol is adding just rune into the pools, there's a lot of different effects that the entire protocol and liquidity machine has on the network, not just, adding rune into the pools.
There's the hard cap on the pools, that will include the POL then, right? So that,
yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then is there a way, I guess, so the POL would go down if we had rune holders who wanted to asymmetrically pool their rune in, say, in the Bitcoin pool, then the POL would reduce to make room for these asymmetrical rune holders that want to enter the pool. So the POL is only there kind of like as a last resort. Is that right or wrong?
No, so POL really only exists to scale up synths. So you still can't earn single-sided rune just entering a liquidity pool. Adding single-sided rune is still, the same as adding like a two-sided
you're right.
deposit.
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect that. All POL really does is allow synths to scale up, so this is like the first step of, we add POL so that way synths can grow really large. Like we can have, 100 million of synth assets on the network, which can be locked into the pools for single-sided yields, basically. So the POL just allows synths to grow really large, because right now, if synths can only be 30% of the network, and right now, I'm not looking at the numbers right now, but let's say there's 150 million of liquidity on the network, then that means we can only grow single-sided liquidity adds up to that amount, right? And then it'll just be capped out, and then no one can add liquidity. So POL just allows synths to scale really large, so that way, people can start adding single-sided liquidity once that feature is live.
Yeah, sorry guys, still something that not in my brain isn't clicking, but I'll just keep paying attention. So yeah, thank you.
No worries. I made a graphic with about POL earlier this week, and it'll definitely be out before the feature is live on mainnet. So like right now, it's in the next THORnode version, which will be adopted really shortly. But it's still going to be just tested in SageNet for a while. It's not like going live. I don't believe so.
Is there anything other than the GitLab page to read up on in your graphic? Is there anything else? Because I don't know, for some reason, I'm just having a hard time. There's a piece missing where I can't get the full picture.
I don't know. Maybe Ryan might know. I feel like there might be some kind of video that Chad made about protocol and liquidity. I'm not sure if anyone else here has like I feel like there might be, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't know if you guys have seen anything.
That's cool. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Sweet. Thanks, man. Lucas, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a quick question about the aggregator. I heard you talking on the very beginning that the aggregator will be released together or right after AVAX release within 2 weeks or so. But I think I heard Chad telling something that the aggregator will come August 23rd. Is there more than one aggregator, or how does it actually work? Two releases?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. We should probably have more clarity when we say aggregator now, because there's really like many potential aggregators, right? So what Cal was referring to with AVAX is an AVAX aggregator coming out at basically the same time as the AVAX integration. So meaning AVAX itself gets integrated into THORChain. There's an AVAX rune pool, but then basically within this, right around the same time as the launch, I don't know if you said 2 weeks or right away or whatever, but then it would also be able to aggregate all the Avalanche tokens through aggregation as well. So then you'd be able to swap like Bitcoin to some AVAX token, right? What I was referring to with the THORswap one, that's the Ethereum ERC20 aggregator that has kind of been like the one we were talking about for a while. That's coming out on August 23rd. But yeah, there's really like multiple phases to aggregation, and you'll just see aggregation like become really just grow and grow over time. Like we were also just talking about IBC aggregator. So that would be like an aggregator that aggregates all the IBC tokens. So they're really like, they're all separate contracts. It's the same concept, right? But it's like for each chain, multiple projects can even spin up their own aggregator contracts. Like, for example, like THORswap can have an aggregator contract, and Rango can have an aggregator contract, and DeFi Spot can have aggregator contracts. So you'll see a lot of different ones being built that do things slightly differently, but they're all using the same like base layer THORChain aggregator capability to build these things on top. So yeah, you'll see it expand over time.
Okay, understood. So it's even better than what I was expecting. So it means that each aggregator, we can swap the tokens that AVAX has or Ethereum has on its own chain, right?
Right. Yeah. So for example, like with I'll just speak from the THORswap side for a second, but with this aggregator coming out in a few days, like that will aggregate all the ERC20 tokens from Uniswap V1, V2 and V3, SushiSwap, 0x, and 1inch. So basically you can swap like, random ERC20 to Bitcoin. You could swap Doge to random ERC20. And then, yeah, when the AVAX one comes out, that same concept would apply to all the Avalanche tokens. So it's basically like using a contract on the Ethereum or the Avalanche side, and then interacting with the THORChain pools. So there's like swap in and swap out and stuff like that. But maybe eventually, I guess you could see, I was just having a thought, but I'll leave that aside. But yeah, you'll see you'll see all those different to and from being capable with the aggregator.
Okay, understood now. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks.
Sweet, yeah. Aggregator is going to be sick, and the AVAX aggregator going to be stupid fire. Question from Juggernaut. I just saw. Is it possible to make an Osmo rune pool? Not right now. It is possible, and we could add, like, Osmo is on the list of chains that could be added to THORChain. So hopefully we could see something like that one day. It'd actually be a fairly simple integration because it'd be very similar to the Atom integration. So hopefully there can be some support from that eventually, because I think that would be a strong integration, and especially with an aggregator that could come with it, that would be super tight. But nothing's being worked on right now specifically with the osmosis, but that would be a strong addition. Hope that answered your question.
It does. Thank you. So just going further, as Keaton mentioned, rune prices. All the aggregators will use rune as a gas fee, so maybe it will increase, right?
So any swap that uses an aggregator is still going to be using THORChain. Well, I slightly misspoke there. I mean, you could have like an interface that aggregates routes that don't use THORChain. Like, for example, if the THORSwap aggregator, if you wanted to swap like ETH to an ERC20, it might not actually route through THORChain itself. But for the most part, if you're doing a route that uses THORChain, then you're still using the THORChain pools. So everything that we normally talk about as far as like swap volume driving fees, which attracts more liquidity, which helps drive rune price, all of that still applies really exactly the same to the aggregator. It's just that now there's so many more potential swaps. So the potential for volume through THORChain pools is much higher. So it's definitely a good thing for Rune because it basically just increases the potential for swaps and increases the potential for volume, which then increases fees, which can attract more liquidity. So yeah, aggregation is like not just a cool thing to have for users, but it actually, it really like expands the core function of THORChain itself and like drives the key metrics that we want to see from THORChain. So.
Yep, and just to clarify, like any swap that goes through THORChain, it always uses Rune. So Rune is the settlement asset of THORChain. So any swap, an aggregator swap, an ETH to Bitcoin swap, any single swap that uses a THORChain pool will always either start or settle in Rune every single time. So just using the aggregator going to like a low liquidity ERC20 token, that's going to swap whatever coin you start with to Rune, and then Rune to ETH, and then ETH to your coin on the ERC20 network. So every single swap on THORChain will always either start or settle in Rune, and bring some value to Rune that way.
Yeah, you can think of it as just like an extra swap. Just the nice thing is that in the actual interface, it's only going to be like one transaction approval. So you'll feel like you're just doing one transaction, but on the back end, like more stuff is happening. And it's like, for example, if you're swapping from, SHIB ERC20 to Bitcoin, you're still using the ETH rune pool and the BTC rune pool. So yeah.
Sweet. Anyone else want to come up and ask some questions? Is Fat Kid in a Dream here? Fat Kid in a Dream going once? Nah, he's not here. Damn. He requested last week while we were having that nice conversation, and I don't want to like interrupt the flow of it.
No, yeah, you did the right thing, but I don't think last week was the time for it. But
no, it wasn't.
I mean, I've got the popcorn ready. I want to see what he has to say at least. For people that don't have context, it's just this guy that's been like trolling around on THORChain's Twitter tweets and stuff saying that, like, I don't know, he thinks some wacky shit is happening. So he wanted to state his case and have Chad B or somebody like, take the other side, and we'll see what happens with that at some point, I'm sure.
Yo, Asian, what's up, man?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. With regards to the AVAX aggregator, is there going to be like a required amount of liquidity before like the aggregators, like the preferred path? Because I know when Atom launched, I think DeFi Spot was saying like it needed like 3 million in the pool before it like actually uses that route as the preferred aggregator. So as I understood, there's going to be no like deployment from the treasury to like seed that pool because it's mainnet. So I just wanted to know, like, how's that going to work like with the aggregator and AVAX going live at the same time?
Yeah. Oh, there it is. What's up? Chad just popped in an hour late. All right, no problem. But yeah, actually, I do remember someone speaking about that exact situation about how like it doesn't actually make sense for the aggregator to go live before a certain amount of liquidity is live on the network. Although we did want the aggregator to go live just as like a you know with the integration just as like a really cool thing and for our partners that are doing this aggregator pattern. So I don't know if you've thought about this, Chad, whether the aggregator would actually go live right away or whether we need to a certain amount of liquidity on the network, because otherwise that would just result in a lot of slippage the whole way through. So
Yeah.
what's up, Chad? I hope you're doing good.
So the question is, whether or not the DEX aggregator will be live when 95 goes up. Is that the question?
No, the question, Chad, was does there need to be like a minimum amount of liquidity before like the DEX aggregation through Pangolin is like the preferred route? Because there's just some discussion when Adam went live, and we were kind of discussing about like the aggregator for that as well. Like there needed to be like a minimum amount. I just wasn't sure if that was true or not.
There's no minimum amount. It's really up to the UIs to determine that on their own, rather than the protocol itself. Protocol will go live, and DEX aggregation will go live at the same time, and all those things will just be enabled right off the bat. But if the UIs determine that they don't feel there's enough liquidity in the AVAX pool, blah blah blah, then they can determine on a per UI basis whether they want to enable it or not.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think when you're saying like if there would be another route, I mean, that's up to like if DeFi Spot or some interface had like other available routes, then they might just choose the one that has the least slippage. So like the user ends up with the best output. Yeah.
I guess either way, like as more liquidity gets added, the DEX aggregation won't have as much of a problem with larger trades, right? It'll just take whatever best route for the front ends.
Right. And I would expect on day one there wouldn't be like a large quantity of liquidity.
Exactly.
And it'll take, a few weeks or something like this to hopefully collect some good liquidity and some good depth to it. And over time that will hopefully get larger just as the network gets more utilized, blah, blah, blah. But you're absolutely right what you're saying.
Right. The other question I had was I was just having a quick discussion with Orion on like Twitter about like the protocol liquidity, and there's the hard cap for about like 40 for another additional like 40 million, roughly 45 million rune. But we were just like having a discussion about like how much initially of a cap there should be on the percent of rune from the reserve. And we were just basically saying or Ryan was just suggesting like 1 million to 5 million rune initially. And then as we feel comfortable in battle testing that with, more synth utilization or like single-sided staking, we can increase that. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, Chad.
Yeah, definitely want to start small. I would even say I wouldn't want to go more than 1 million on day one. We may bump it up fairly quick after like a week or so of this behavior and making sure everything kind of operates in the way that it's expected to operate. And then we can bump up over time. But it'll be interesting to see. The POL by itself will probably not be used very much when it's first launched, just because there won't be a demand for synths. Right now, like there's not enough synths utilization that any of the pools would even deploy any room to any of the pools at all, because all the pools have, are below their like maximum cap. Right. So even if we were deployed today, it wouldn't really do anything in a literal sense. And it's not really until we get like single-sided yield or order book or something like this that creates a demand center for synthetics.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Thanks for answering the questions.
No worries.
Sweet. We had a question from. Well, actually, first off, there's someone who commented on Twitter. When will THORChain be available on the Nano S Plus? And that's a good question. And the last I heard is that we're working on it is like, kind of like the answer that they that they give. So I don't know if there's any further response from that you guys have heard of.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just a bunch of dicking around. It feels like to me, we gave them the code for it, really early on, and we're just waiting for them to like flip the switch or whatever. And it's just I don't know why it's so painful and so time consuming just to do simple small changes. Like, it's so frustrating, really, to be honest with you. But there's no ETL on it. We're just waiting for Ledger to get their shit in gear and just flip it on.
Yeah, if you're looking to buy a Ledger right now and you want to store your rune on it, don't buy a S Plus. At the moment, it's not available on the S plus, only the regular model. Is that just the S? I think. Yeah, I think so.
X2, yeah.
And the X.
There's a part of me that just wants to like build a new project on the side that's just like a competitor to like Ledger that is like free and open source, and it moves at the speed of the market, moves at the speed of the industry, rather than this top down, controlled by a few executives, blah blah blah. Like this whole thing just like antithetical to crypto in general, and it kind of offends me in some sense. Do you know what I mean? Like we should have.
You mean everything that is built in crypto before like before the last couple of years? Everything that like, oh, we love decentralization. By the way, sign up for an account here, and
yeah, give me your email. I'm going to control all the software. Blah blah blah. Like this is bullshit. This is just so counter like the entire ethos of the industry. So there's like a small part of me that wants to just like build a competitor to Ledger just because fuck that shit.
That sounds pretty sick. So you'd have like the physical hardware, but then just like the code would be open source, so like anyone could add integrations.
Yeah, everything would be open source. Hardware you can buy online. You can install your own firmware if you want to. Install your own apps. Blah blah blah. Even just the way that it works of like you have to like launch it. You can install an app and then launch that app, and then you can sign something. Like it doesn't make it simple that I could sign multiple transactions on multiple chains if I wanted to, and I felt clicking like crazy around all these places, and then like, I don't know why the fuck does the Nano S have like 2 megabytes of fucking space? Like, what is that about?
So you could sell the other one.
Yeah,
I know. I guess
it really feels like 20-year-old old technology. Like it's so like the screen is terrible. You're just like clicking buttons to navigate. And yeah, what you just mentioned with like having multiple apps open. I mean, that's like the main reason why people will complain about using hardware wallets with THORChain interfaces, because it's like the ledger itself just isn't. It's not even like thinking about that problem, So it's just not possible right now to make it seamless.
I want to do like a different interface. Like I want to do like kind of like an iPod spin wheel, right, as an interface to it. But that's much more effective and efficient. Like if you ever like try to put in your 24 words into a ledger, it like takes 3.5 hours to do it. It's like it's so painful, and like it just feels like this industry is just ripe for the plucking of somebody to build and actually really like easy to use, clean, secure, open source, freely available to the entire industry. Like that's such an event. Like it's $1 million idea right there. Anybody wants to take that one up?
Totally.
$1 million idea.
I've seen a couple that are like kind of cool, but every time I look into them, they're like, we support Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work for my needs.
Yeah, that's why you have to make it open source, right? Because the industry moves so fast. There's no corporate entity that can reasonably move with it, right? It's too slow of a process. So you have to make it open source and make it freely available to everybody. And if a new chain comes out like Solana or whatever, they want to add support for this new hardware wallet, they can just fucking add it themselves and make it open source. I mean, anybody can just download that and install it and carry on, right? Like, what the hell? This is how it's supposed to work, people.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine how good the UX would be just swapping, native asset for native asset directly on your ledger without like it could be so simple, but it's just not yet. And I think eventually that we'll get to that point where it's like where it is that simple. You just swap, you press 3 buttons on your ledger, and then it swaps, one coin right to your other without ever exposing your private keys or anything like that in a secure way. Like it could be so easy, but there's a lot to be desired. Hopefully Ledger can solve it. If not, someone else will solve it, and people will end up using the service that works best for them.
Maybe this is the shortcut to getting THORChain integrated into Ledger. We just say, screw that and rebuild Ledger, and it comes out of the box with THORChain integration. You can just swap all your native assets right on this beautiful device. That'd be pretty amazing.
I'm actually down for something like that. That would be worth my time. Something to build.
I'm kind of excited.
Well, a little bit busy now, but maybe at some point in the future when things are less hectic for me, like we can start focusing on something
busy.
like that.
What are you busy on? What are you doing?
Lots of things, my friend. Lots of things.
Yeah, we went through the entire 195 release today. Kenton, I had a question that you could probably answer a little bit more fully and explain some things to us. I don't know if you want to come back up and ask your question again, Kenton, but we were talking a little bit about just the dynamics of protocol owned liquidity and where there's rune sell pressure and buy pressure, and whether that causes too much of basically like a selling of rune, or like a more inflationary rune by adding POL. We're saying mostly that things are like sort of balanced out demand wise, because people still have to add in people add dual sided into the pools to create synth space, and synths get locked up, which locks more rune, but at the same time the protocol is adding rune into the pool. So I don't know if you want to, I've canceled up here if you want to ask a question. Sorry.
No, good. I think you did good. We'll let Chad answer.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So when if you're trying to acquire a synthetic and you throw in some layer 1 BDC, that creates, say you're buying $100 worth of synthetic BDC, you are creating $100 worth of buy pressure on the rune asset, right? But then the network, in this hypothetical scenario where it has to kind of provide the other side of it, the network's going to provide rune. So they're going to create $100 worth of rune sell pressure on the other side. So it depends upon what percentage of the synth utilization the network is going to allow for that pool. So if imagine it's 50% of the pool depth, not the asset depth, but the pool depth, then it's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio, which means you're creating $100 of buy pressure for the rune asset, and then you're creating $100 of sell pressure for the rune asset. So it ends up being, just nil, right? If you have a lower than that, say you had like 25% of the pool depth, then you're going to create $100 of buy pressure in the rune asset, and then $200 of sell pressure in the rune asset, because the network has to provide double of what the synth has provided to go back to that percentage target that we have. So it all depends upon that, right? And then it has the same effect in reverse, right? So say somebody's getting rid of a synthetic, we're gonna create $100 of sell pressure, and then the network pulling out into rune will create $200 of buy pressure, right? So it depends on the direction where we're going. If we're adding synths or removing synths, we'll create buy pressure or sell pressure, and also what the synth utilization is that we're targeting. The lower that number is, the greater inequality between the buy and sell pressure, versus if you do like straight up 50% of the synth depth, the pool depth, it'll be like a 1-to-1 ratio. It'll be like basically nil.
I'm still lost. I'm sorry, guys. Chad, you did when synths first came out, you did a video with a spreadsheet where you kind of broke it down. Is that spreadsheet on Google Sheets where people can look at it and play with it? And then maybe if I play with the math and I see it on Excel, maybe I can start to make sense.
I did one for, I don't think I did one for synths. I think I did one for like THORify many months ago.
Okay.
I don't recall doing one for synths. Maybe I did. I just forget it now. Certainly possible. But could I create a doc for synths and POL? Yeah, I suppose I could do that. I could see if I had some time to throw together like a video and an Excel sheet to kind of walk through the math of it. Do you want me to do that?
I mean, if you don't mind, sure. I mean, I can try to do it myself. I can't even find the math. I don't even know how to be, where to start with the math to do it myself. Because what I'm stuck on is with POL, like, is that inflation? Is that just adding rune to the network? It doesn't affect the rune price, but it just allows the network to grow in size, but doesn't affect the rune price.
No, I would say that it probably does affect the rune price, because that rune that's in the network now, in the reserve now, that is non-circulating rune, right? Because there's no mechanism to pull it out. Nobody can arbitrarily decide to buy it or sell it. It's just locked in there, and it's getting secreted through mathematical procedures that everybody's already kind of aware of. As soon as you throw that into a pool, there's this potential that the circulating supply of rune basically effectively does increase, right? Because now that rune can be bought and sold just through regular mechanisms of the market, blah blah blah. So yes, it does cause an inflationary effect. So the question then becomes, what's more valuable to the network, right? Like the pro versus the con. Like the con being, we are adding more rune into the pools, right? And more rune in terms of circulating supply. We're theoretically, that max that it possibly could be is we're adding maybe another, like, I don't know if the number is 20 or 30 million somewhere in that area. I think I haven't done the math in a long time, but like somewhere between like 20 and 30 million rune in circulation on top of the 230 that is in circulating today or something like this. So you're increasing it, not a whole lot, like 5-10%. And the absolute extreme scenario of like we max everything out like crazy, right?
And that 20, 30 million number, you're getting that because of the hard cap, right? We can't go any
because of the yes. So the network's only going to be able to put in enough rune that the bond can support. Right? You're not going to just dump rune infinitely into the pools and everything's cool. That's not how it works. So because the bonds are so deep and the pools already have some percentage of that depth already calculated, and how much rune can fit in there is relative to the remaining space that is in the pools that can't allow. And you have to figure out and then you have to calculate that in comparison with the synthetics that's also being added. And so whatever the kind of target utilization we're targeting for, which that's TBD, that hasn't been determined yet. But whatever that number is will affect the result, right? Like, so if that number is, like 20%, let's just say, right, just for sake of argument, the amount of rune will be more, because for every, $1 of synthetic, the network will put in, $3 or something. Like, these are making up numbers here. These aren't exact numbers, but just making things up. So that the amount of rune that the network can secrete in is larger than if you did a centralization of like 50%, because now it's going to be like a 1-to-1 ratio, right? So the amount of rune that the network's going to put in is going to be, a third or half what it would be in the smaller number, right? So you're getting all that kind of action going on, but then at the same time, you're also providing synths.
Can you guys hear okay? Sorry, things cut out for me.
Yeah, I can hear.
Sorry, was I muted there?
Yeah, just
for the last 2 seconds.
Okay, I don't know. So the benefit here is that we're allowing people to earn, yield on their synthetic, right? Or so earn a BDC on their BDC, which is a big kind of draw, right? It's going to cause a lot of attention and focus and people to get involved and with the network and provide capital and learn more about it, and maybe then also buying some room because they've become fans of THORChain. They want to be speculative on it, and they want to hold some room just because they believe in the project. So that's kind of the trade-off that we have to think about as a community is, on the one hand, the reserve capital that it's putting into the pools is, in my opinion, inflating the room supply by about maybe 5 to 10% or some number like this. I'm not sure the exact number, but something like that, which is, to me, is not all that significant in terms of its theoretical effects onto the price. But then the benefit is we're getting this new functionality of single asset yield, which is, a long sought kind of feature that everybody would wish they could have, right? And we're more or less the first ones to provide that. So for me, in my opinion, the pro far outweighs the con, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's great. I'm just what I'm stuck on is I don't see how that drives up the rune price. Directly, when somebody's adding, say, a Bitcoin to create a synth, okay, that's buying pressure on the rune token, that drives up the price. But then when the protocol adds liquidity, then in my mind, that's inflation, which drives down the price. So they negate the effects are negated. So we're increasing the size of the pools, the network, but we're not really increasing the price of the rune token, which is fine. I'm not saying it has to or it should. Adding a feature, growing the network is great. I just want to make sure I understand the mechanism, how is this actually affecting the rune price, whether it's up or down or neutral.
It's affecting it in 2 ways, and it's in a positive direction. So the direct way is that the act of the pools becoming much deeper and the pools getting much more full, the pendulum swings towards the nodes, right? So all of a sudden the nodes start earning, much higher yield than they are today. And so all of a sudden, oh, wow, the yield goes from, 10% to whatever it is right now on the nodes to, 20% or 30% or some number. I don't know what the number is going to be, but just some higher number. And so that creates oh, wow, it's a huge yield on rune. And then the nodes, want to buy up more rune so they can get more yield on that rune, blah, blah, blah. So that creates a direct kind of buy pressure on the rune asset just from the nodes, the node operators wanting to, take a larger position because it's a much larger yield all of a sudden, right? Mm-hmm. The indirect way is just that by providing something that nobody else has really provided before, especially on assets that people want it provided for, like Bitcoin, for example, the awareness of THORChain grows significantly. At least in my opinion, this is true. And so as the community of THORChain grows, the number of participants in the network or in the community increases, then inherently that also creates, buy pressure in an indirect way, right? It's not direct, like one person creates $100 of pressure or something like this, but in an indirect way, people create awareness, and that the community grows. The larger the community grows, the more buy pressure inherently there is, correlationally speaking, and then the room price should rise with that, right? That's partially one of the thesis of, like, as we add a new chain, whether it be, Dash or Cardano or, whatever. And those other communities are now learning about THORChain, for many of them, like for the first time, or getting a more of a in-depth look at it. They become fans of it because they allow us to trade my Dash to Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. And then they become members of our community, right? Providing liquidity and holding Rune and being exposed to it and becoming fans and interacting with our community, which inherently causes our community to grow, which causes the price inherently to grow with it.
Okay, that's great, because my initial, I guess, concern or worry about single side liquidity in POL was it's going to leverage the Rune price. It'll drive up the Rune token, which is great. We all want to go up, but then there's the downside, right? Leverage works both ways, and if those single-sided stakers pull out and Rune, tanks, and the Rune price is volatile, it hinders that whole everything you just said about building a network and community and users and all that. It's better when the Rune token is more stable as opposed to volatile. So,
well, no, a volatile Rune token is beneficial for the LPs, especially, right? Because a volatile Rune asset means there's lots of arbitrage opportunity, which creates lots of opportunity for collecting of fees. Like, the network loves a volatile Rune in some sense. But the reason why I'm not, you're right in the sense that, what goes up must come down kind of mentality. Like that's perfectly fine and legitimate. But when I talk about something like the THORChain community growing, that generally grows in a one direction. Generally, that's not always true, of course. But generally, like, as you kind of get more and more people involved with it and you kind of grow your community, it doesn't always, it doesn't generally shrink all that much, because people, unless something happens and there's an exploit or there's a rug pull, or I don't know, like something like of this fucking nature that's just, is not very, very likely. But like those things have more sticky power. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, it's much more sticky in that sense. If you just have people like just doing like,
is my phone screwed up or Chad's?
Oh, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. It's probably just the Twitter space bug. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. You can listen to the recording, Kenton. It's not turning out good.
If you get in a situation where you're doing mercenary capital is just like, it has no stickiness to it, right? People just come and they can go and they'll move and they'll leave and they'll sell and they'll buy. Like, all those things just kind of fluctuate with the wind, right? But providing a service that nobody else can provide, that everybody else wants to be provided, that is a much stickier situation to be in, which is beneficial for the network, especially in the long term. Hopefully Kenton can hear that. I'm not sure if he's having a hard time hearing me.
Well, he dropped out. I think it's fine. I can hear you fine. I think it's a clear explanation, and the recording's there too, if he wants to go back and listen to it.
It's a good question to ask.
To me, is there anyone else that wants to come up and ask a question before we wrap up for today? Anything you're excited about, Chad, or anything you want to discuss? We talked a little bit about POL at the beginning, and just pretty much everything that's new in 195, which is like seems like 5 million things in 195. It's a really big release.
195 was mega huge, probably maybe even too huge, to be honest. We should work on keeping it a little bit smaller in the future. But there's a lot of things I'm really excited about. I'm obviously excited about the POL single-sided asset order books that's being worked on now. To me, these are probably the next major features to the core protocol. And then beyond that, I'm also very excited about the tornado cash kit. Like, this is going to be a significant moment in our industry's history where we start to kind of force regulation to be clarified, because now you're just sanctioned a non-entity that does not have an ability to appeal itself, which is by some people would consider that to be unconstitutional, me being one of them. And so it's going to create lawsuits and stuff like this to force out to finally have regulatory clarity or these things. And in my opinion, I think it's going to fall, on our side, right? Just as it did in the 1990s with the encryption wars that the cyberpunks were kind of waging against governments. In the end, cyberpunks won for a good reason too. And I think the same kind of ideas and thought process will apply here as well. And I think we'll become victorious, but that'll be a multi-year, 3 to 5 year process. But this is like the first kind of rock that's been thrown, and it's going to be exciting to see how this kind of moves forward, going over the next 2 years.
Guys, I don't know what happened to my Twitter. I'm sorry, I had to reset it, but I'll listen to the recording. But Chad, thanks for your answers. I won't hog any more time. Thanks, guys.
No, thank you for asking, Ken.
Sweet. Anything else that we want to discuss? Last call.
I don't think so. Sorry, I couldn't make the beginning of it. I was helping my wife out with something.
No problem. Pluto was on. We had a good review of pretty much everything that's new in 195. All right, let's let Juggernaut up real quick.
Yeah, cool. I'll see you all next week.
Wait, one more.
Oh, one more. Okay, go ahead.
Here we go. What's up, Juggernaut? You there? Can't hear
Seems
you.
like we cannot hear you this time.
Yeah, I can't hear him either.
No.
I don't know, maybe the audience can.
Yeah, it works. Thanks for the answer about Osmo. Thank you very much. I don't know if it's the right place to talk about this, but just got an idea. We are every day closer to the 365 days since the reboot of THORChain without any hack. So it's to talk about something that nobody here so much. It's about marketing. So why not make an event at the 365 days to show to everyone that hack are in past of THORChain. Now it's safe, and just shut up to all haters. That's all. Just an opportunity to make some noise. What do you think about it?
Well, the hacks from a marketing perspective has been kind of a thorn on my side, because every time I have an interview or a meeting with somebody or something like this, they always have to ask that question, which is just annoying to answer after a year of answering that question, as you can probably imagine. I wouldn't want to make, to me, like the best way to move forward is just to move past it and not dwell on it any further or bring it up any more than I have to. But the other thing is, like, I would never want to tell people that THORChain, is hack free and there will not be any more hacks or exploits. Like, that's just something I cannot say publicly, because I don't know that for absolute fact, obviously. No code base can make this kind of promise. Anyone that does, you should probably run away from them because they're probably just, selling smoke and mirrors at that point. I wouldn't trust them if that just shows them that they're detached from what they're actually doing. So I wouldn't want to make any public statement saying, hey, we've been hack free for over a year now and everything is fine and nothing will ever happen again. That's something I certainly will not say publicly. I might feel that way internally, but I would not want to say that and then 2 months go by and something happens and then somebody's yelling at me because I told them, nothing would ever happen again in the future. And apparently I was wrong in that hypothetical. So I don't think there will be any more hacks personally. Like, I'm not terribly concerned about it. I mean, I'm always concerned about it. I'm always working with the THORsec team, like, to be fair. But like, I feel quite confident after many months of testing and all the auditing we've done and the procedures we set up, the bug bounties, the protections we have on the network, like, all these things give me a good amount of confidence. But I can never make the statement that we're like, everything is fine and nothing will ever happen again. That would just be irresponsible and probably even downright, misleading.
Okay. Understood. Thank you very much.
Sweet. Thanks, Juggernaut. All right. Let's wrap it up. Thanks everyone for coming out. They always hold these on Fridays at noon Eastern. So hope to see you guys again in the future. There's recordings anywhere you get your podcasts. So look for the Rune-based podcast, and they also go up on YouTube. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, guys. See ya.